Ethan Carter was having one of those days where nothing seemed to go right. It was late afternoon, and the rain had been pouring down steadily for hours. His sneakers were soaked, his jeans clung uncomfortably to his legs, and the hood of his blue sweatshirt did little to keep him dry as he hurried along the crowded streets of New York City. Ethan worked as a courier, delivering packages for a small company that paid just enough to help him get by while he finished college. Today's route had been especially tough because of the weather, but he couldn't afford to slack off, not when rent was due next week. As he turned onto a quieter side street, Ethan noticed something lying on the ground near a puddle. At first glance, it looked like trash or maybe a discarded newspaper, but as he got closer, he saw that it was actually an envelope. It wasn't sealed, and its plain brown surface gave no clue about what might be inside. Curious, Ethan picked it up and flipped it over. There was no name or address written anywhere. Probably junk, he muttered under his breath, shaking off some of the rainwater before tucking it under his arm. Still, something about the envelope felt strange. Important even. Maybe it was, the way it seemed untouched despite the heavy rain. Or maybe it was just instinct telling him not to ignore it. Either way, Ethan decided to take a quick look before tossing it aside. He ducked into the doorway of a closed shop to shield himself from the rain and opened the envelope carefully. Inside, he found a stack of papers. They weren't ordinary documents. They were detailed blueprints, financial reports, and handwritten notes filled with technical jargon. Scanning through them quickly, Ethan realized they all bore the same logo, a sleek, futuristic design with the words Novatech Industries printed boldly at the top. Novatech was one of the biggest companies in the world, known for its cutting-edge technology and mysterious CEO Marcus Langley. Everyone knew the name, though few people really understood what the company did beyond creating advanced gadgets and software. Whatever these documents were, they clearly belonged to someone important, and losing them must have been a big deal. For a moment, Ethan considered keeping the envelope. After all, who would miss a random package found on the street? But then he thought about how panicked he'd feel if he lost something valuable and someone else refused to return it. Honesty won out in the end. He zipped the envelope into his messenger bag and pulled out his phone to search for contact information for Novatech Industries. The first thing he noticed online was how hard it was to find any direct way to reach the company. Their website was full of flashy graphics and vague descriptions, but there was no clear email address or phone number listed for general inquiries. Frustrated, Ethan scrolled through forums and social media posts until he stumbled upon a tip. If you wanted to talk to someone at Novatech, you had to call their main office line and hope for the best. With a sigh, Ethan dialed the number. A robotic voice greeted him, offering a menu of options. None of them sounded helpful, so he pressed 0 repeatedly until a real person finally answered. The woman on the other end sounded annoyed at first, but her tone changed when Ethan explained what he'd found. "You're sure it's ours?" she asked sharply. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It has your logo on every page." There was a pause, followed by the sound of typing. "Hold on. Let me check with someone upstairs." She put him on hold without waiting for a response, leaving Ethan listening to generic elevator music while rain continued to patter against the pavement outside. After what felt like forever, the woman came back on the line. "Mr. Carter, is it? Someone will need to verify the contents of the envelope in person. Can you bring it to our downtown office immediately?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't love the idea of heading into the heart of Manhattan during rush hour, especially since public transportation would likely be delayed because of the storm. On the other hand, this could be his chance to see inside Novatech, a place most people only dreamed of visiting. Plus, doing the right thing always felt better than taking shortcuts. "I can be there in an hour," he said finally. "Good. Ask for Sophie Bennett when you arrive, and don't be late." The call ended abruptly, leaving Ethan staring at his phone. For a second, he wondered if he'd made a mistake. Returning lost property was one thing, but walking straight into the lion's den felt like another story entirely. Shaking off his doubts, he stepped back out into the rain and started toward the subway station. The journey downtown was predictably miserable. Trains were delayed, Umbrellas turned inside out in the wind, and everyone seemed crankier than usual. By the time Ethan reached Novatech's headquarters, he was soaked to the bone and exhausted. The building loomed above him, a towering glass structure that reflected the dark clouds overhead. Its entrance was guarded by two men in black suits, who eyed him suspiciously as he approached. Inside, the lobby was everything Ethan expected and more. Polished marble floors gleamed under bright lights, and sleek furniture created an atmosphere of luxury and power. Employees moved briskly between elevators and security checkpoints. Their faces set in expressions of focus and determination. Ethan felt completely out of place in his damp hoodie and scuffed sneakers. At the front desk, a receptionist directed him to wait in a seating area near the elevators. Minutes ticked by slowly, and Ethan began to wonder if anyone would even show up. Just as he was starting to lose hope, a woman appeared. She was tall and elegant, with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her tailored suit screamed professionalism. "Are you Ethan Carter?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Ethan replied, standing quickly. "I'm here to return the documents." The woman nodded curtly. "Follow me." She introduced herself as Sophie Bennett, Marcus Langley's personal assistant, as they walked toward a bank of elevators. Ethan tried to make small talk, but Sophie remained tight-lipped, her attention focused solely on leading him deeper into the labyrinthine building. Eventually, they arrived at a set of double doors marked Executive Offices. Sophie swiped a key card, and they entered a quieter, more private space. Marcus Langley's office was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and minimalist furniture gave the room an almost sterile quality. In the center of it all sat Langley himself, a tall, imposing figure with piercing eyes and an air of authority that filled the room. Despite his reputation as a reclusive genius, Langley didn't seem angry or impatient. Instead, he regarded Ethan with quiet curiosity. "So, you're the young man who found my documents," Langley said, gesturing for Ethan to sit. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that demanded respect. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, clutching the envelope tightly. "I didn't know what else to do, so I figured returning them was the right thing." Langley studied him for a moment before nodding approvingly. "Honesty is rare these days, Mr. Carter. You've done well." Before Ethan could respond, Sophie stepped forward and took the envelope from him. She flipped through the pages briefly, her expression unreadable. Satisfied, she handed them back to Langley, who glanced at them before setting them aside. "Tell me, Mr. Carter," Langley said, leaning forward slightly. "What do you plan to do with your life?" Caught off guard by the question, Ethan stammered, I'm still figuring that out. I'm studying engineering, but I don't know yet." Langley smiled faintly. "Perhaps we can help each other. How would you like to intern here at Novatech?" Ethan blinked, certain he'd misheard. "An internship? For me? Why not?" Langley replied. "You've proven yourself trustworthy, and we could use fresh perspectives around here. Think about it. I'll have Sophie send you the details." With that, the meeting ended as abruptly as it had begun. Sophie escorted Ethan back to the lobby, offering polite but distant farewells. As he stepped back out into the rain, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he never saw coming. Little did he know this was only the beginning. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the internship offer from Novatech. For days after meeting Marcus Langley, he replayed their conversation over and over in his mind. Was it real? Could someone like him, a regular college student working part-time as a courier, really fit into a place like Novatech? The idea felt almost surreal. Still, Ethan knew this was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. He accepted the internship, and within a week, Sophie Bennett sent him all the details: start date, schedule, and even a brief overview of what his role would involve. On his first day, Ethan arrived early, determined to make a good impression. Dressed in his best pair of jeans and a clean button-up shirt, he walked into the same lobby where he'd met Sophie just days before. This time, though, things felt different. Instead of being ushered directly to Langley's office, Ethan was greeted by a cheerful woman named Linda, who handed him a visitor badge and explained the basics of the building layout. "You'll be working in the Innovation Lab," Linda said with a warm smile. "Dr. Rachel Monroe will show you around once you get upstairs." Ethan nodded, trying to hide how nervous he felt. The Innovation Lab sounded impressive, but he had no idea what to expect. As he stepped into the elevator, he noticed other employees, giving him curious glances. Some looked friendly, while others seemed indifferent or even suspicious. It was clear that not everyone was used to seeing new faces, especially ones that didn't match the typical corporate mold. When the elevator doors opened on the designated floor, Ethan found himself in a completely different world. Gone were the polished marble floors and quiet professionalism of the lower levels. Here, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. People moved quickly between workstations, chatting animatedly about projects and ideas. Bright colors decorated the walls, and posters promoting creativity and teamwork hung everywhere. In the center of it all stood Dr. Rachel Monroe, a tall woman with curly brown hair and glasses perched on her nose. She wore a lab coat over casual clothes, looking every bit the brilliant scientist Ethan imagined she'd be. "Ethan Carter?" she asked, extending her hand. Her voice was warm and inviting, putting him instantly at ease. "Yes, that's me," Ethan replied, shaking her hand firmly. "Welcome to the team," Rachel said with a grin. "Let's get you settled in." She led him through the lab, explaining each section as they went. There were areas dedicated to robotics, artificial intelligence, and even space exploration. Machines hummed softly in the background, and holographic displays floated above desks, showing complex diagrams and data streams. Ethan tried to take it all in, but it was overwhelming. Everything seemed so advanced, so far beyond anything he'd ever encountered in school. Rachel eventually brought him to a small workstation near the back of the lab. "This will be your spot," she said, gesturing to a desk equipped with a high-end computer and various tools. "For now, I want you to focus on learning. We'll assign you tasks based on your skills, but don't hesitate to ask questions if you're unsure about something." Ethan nodded eagerly. "Thank you, Dr. Monroe. I really appreciate this chance." "Call me Rachel," she corrected, with a laugh. "And don't worry, you'll do great. Everyone starts somewhere." Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into his work. Rachel turned out to be an excellent mentor, patiently guiding him through the basics of programming and engineering. She introduced him to other members of the team, including Mia Torres, another intern who became a fast friend. Mia was outgoing and confident, qualities that balanced Ethan's quieter nature perfectly. Together, they explored the lab, marveling at the incredible projects underway. One afternoon, while reviewing some notes on AI development, Ethan stumbled across something unusual. A file labeled Genesis caught his eye. At first, he thought nothing of it. After all, Genesis sounded harmless enough, but as he clicked through the document, his curiosity turned to unease. The project involved merging human consciousness with machines, creating hybrid beings capable of extraordinary feats. While the concept was fascinating, the ethical implications were troubling. Ethan closed the file quickly, his heart racing. He glanced around to see if anyone had noticed, but the lab was busy as usual. No one paid him any attention. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd uncovered something important, something dangerous. Later that evening, as he packed up to leave, Ethan mentioned Genesis to Mia. They often stayed late to discuss their day, sharing thoughts and theories about the work happening around them. When Ethan described what he'd seen, Mia's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" she whispered, leaning closer. "That sounds insane." "I know," Ethan admitted, "but it's real. I saw the files myself." Mia frowned. "We should be careful. If this is as big as it sounds, we don't want to draw attention to ourselves." Ethan agreed, though he couldn't help wondering what else might be hidden within Novatech's walls. Over the next few days, he kept quiet about Genesis, focusing instead on his assigned tasks. But the more he learned about the company, the more questions he had. Why were certain areas of the lab restricted? Who decided which projects got funding? And most importantly, what exactly was Marcus Langley planning? His suspicions deepened when he overheard a heated argument between two senior researchers. Standing near the break room, Ethan pretended to read a report while listening intently. One of the scientists, a balding man with glasses, was clearly upset. "This isn't right," the man hissed. "We're playing God here. What happens if something goes wrong?" The other researcher, a younger woman with sharp features, rolled her eyes. "Relax, Greg. These are calculated risks. Besides, Langley knows what he's doing." Greg shook his head. "You don't understand. Once we cross this line, there's no going back." Their voices dropped as they moved away, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He realized then that Novatech wasn't just a tech company. It was a hub of experimentation pushing boundaries most people wouldn't dare touch. And Genesis was only the tip of the iceberg. Despite his growing concerns, Ethan continued to excel in his role. His hard work earned praise from Rachel and others, and he began to feel like he truly belonged. Yet, the shadow of Genesis lingered in the back of his mind, gnawing at him whenever he least expected it. He knew he couldn't ignore it forever, but confronting the truth might come at a cost he wasn't ready to pay. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan found himself torn between loyalty to Novatech and the nagging sense that something was deeply wrong. Little did he know, his discovery would soon thrust him into a battle much bigger than himself, one that would test his courage, his morals, and ultimately, his faith in humanity itself. A young black man in a hoodie sits alone in a dimly lit high-tech lab at night. The room is filled with glowing monitors displaying lines of code and complex diagrams. His face is illuminated by the soft blue light of the screens as he leans forward, looking worried and deep in thought. Behind him, shelves lined with advanced gadgets and robotic parts create an eerie yet futuristic atmosphere. Ethan's curiosity about Genesis grew stronger with each passing day. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stumbled onto something bigger than he could handle. But instead of backing away, he found himself drawn deeper into the mystery. It wasn't just about satisfying his own questions anymore. It was about understanding what Novatech was truly capable of and whether their work could harm people. One evening, after most of the team had left for the day, Ethan decided to dig a little deeper. He knew it was risky, but the lab was quieter at night and fewer eyes meant fewer chances of getting caught. Sitting at his workstation, he logged into the system using the credentials Rachel had given him. At first, everything seemed normal. Files related to ongoing projects loaded without issue. But when he tried accessing restricted folders, a warning popped up on the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. For a moment, he thought alarms would go off or security guards would rush in. But nothing happened. The message disappeared, leaving him staring at a blank screen. Taking a deep breath, he tried again, this time entering commands he'd picked up from watching senior researchers. Slowly, the system began to respond, granting him access to files he wasn't supposed to see. What he discovered shocked him. Genesis wasn't just about merging human consciousness with machines. It was about creating superhuman soldiers. Detailed plans outlined how human minds could be uploaded into robotic bodies, enhancing strength, speed, and intelligence beyond natural limits. The documents described experiments already underway, involving volunteers who may not have fully understood the risks. Worst of all, there were reports of failures, people whose minds had been irreparably damaged during the process. Ethan felt sick. He wanted to believe that Novatech was using its power for good, but this was too much. Turning off the computer, he leaned back in his chair, trying to make sense of it all. How could anyone justify such experiments? And why hadn't anyone stopped them? As he sat there lost in thought, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Startled, Ethan quickly gathered his things and turned off the lights at his desk. Peeking through the crack in the door, he saw two men in dark suits walking toward the lab. They weren't regular employees, they looked more like security personnel. One of them held a tablet scrolling through data as they spoke in hushed tones. They said someone accessed the Genesis files tonight, one of them muttered. We need to find out who. Ethan's stomach dropped. There was no doubt they were talking about him. Without thinking, he slipped out the back door of the lab and ducked into a nearby storage closet. Holding his breath, he listened as the men entered the lab and began searching. Their voices grew louder as they moved closer to where he'd been sitting. "This doesn't look right," one of them said. "Someone's been here recently." Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. If they found him, he didn't know. What would happen? Would they arrest him? Or worse? Just as panic started to take over, another voice interrupted them. "What's going on here?" It was Rachel. Her tone was sharp, commanding. The two men hesitated before responding. "Dr. Monroe, we're investigating unauthorized activity in the lab. Someone accessed classified files earlier tonight." Rachel sighed audibly. "You should have come to me first. I'll handle it from here." There was a pause, followed by reluctant agreement. "Fine, but let us know if you need backup." Once the men left, Ethan heard Rachel moving around the lab. After a few minutes, she called out softly, "Ethan, are you still here?" Heart pounding, Ethan stepped out of the closet. Rachel stood near his workstation, her arms crossed, and her expression unreadable. "I figured it was you," she said calmly. "Care to explain?" Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to understand what Genesis was about." Rachel studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Come with me. We don't have much time." She led him to a hidden stairwell and down several flights until they reached a basement level Ethan had never seen before. The space was small and cluttered, filled with old equipment and dusty shelves. In the corner, a group of people sat around a makeshift table, their faces tense but determined. "Everyone, this is Ethan," Rachel announced. "He knows about Genesis." The group exchanged glances, some suspicious, others curious. A man, with short hair and glasses, introduced himself as Alex Rivera. "Former engineer," he explained. "I used to work upstairs until I found out what they were really doing." Alex went on to describe how he'd uncovered similar information months ago and fled Novatech to expose the truth. Unfortunately, no one believed him, not the media, not the government. That's when Rachel and a handful of others formed a secret resistance within the company, working to gather evidence and sabotage unethical projects. "We can't stop Genesis alone," Rachel told Ethan. "But with your help, we might stand a chance." Ethan nodded slowly, realizing the weight of what he'd gotten himself into. "What do you need me to do?" Over the next few days, Ethan became part of the resistance. Under Rachel and Alex's guidance, he learned how to navigate Novatech's systems without triggering alerts. Together, they pieced together fragments of data, building a case against Marcus Langley and his dangerous ambitions. Mia, who had suspected something was wrong for weeks, joined the effort after Ethan confided in her. She proved invaluable, using her charm and wit to distract colleagues and gather intel. Their biggest challenge came when they realized they needed physical proof, hard drives containing incriminating files stored in Novatech's secure server room. Breaking in wouldn't be easy. The room was guarded 24/7 and required multiple levels of authentication to access. But the resistance had a plan. Marcus Langley was hosting a gala event at the headquarters in 2 weeks' time, an opportunity to showcase Novatech's achievements to investors and dignitaries. During the chaos of the party, Ethan and Mia would sneak into the server room while Rachel and Alex created diversions upstairs. It was risky, but it was their best shot. As the EA date approached, Ethan felt a mix of excitement and dread. He knew exposing Genesis could change everything, but failure meant risking not only his life but also the lives of countless others. Despite the danger, he refused to back down. Whatever happened next, he was ready to fight for what was right. Little did Ethan realize, however, that the battle ahead would test him in ways he couldn't imagine, and reveal secrets even darker than those hidden within Novatech's walls. A young black man in a hoodie and a young woman with curly hair sneak through a dimly lit hallway inside a futuristic office building. The walls are sleek and metallic, with glowing blue lights lining the edges of the ceiling. Security cameras can be seen in the background, and the two figures move cautiously, their faces tense but determined, In the distance, a red restricted access sign glows faintly above a heavy steel door. The night of Marcus Langley's gala arrived, and Ethan felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. Outside, the streets buzzed with activity as guests, dressed in elegant suits and gowns, made their way into Novatech's headquarters. Inside, the lobby sparkled with chandeliers and polished surfaces, while waiters carried trays of champagne through crowds of wealthy investors and influential figures. It was the perfect distraction, but Ethan knew that one wrong move could ruin everything. He stood near the entrance, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit right. Beside him, Mia adjusted her dress nervously, her fingers fidgeting with the hem. They had agreed to stick together until it was time to split off and execute their plan. Rachel and Alex were already upstairs mingling with guests and keeping an eye on security personnel. If anyone noticed Ethan or Mia acting suspiciously, they'd step in to create a diversion. "Are you ready?" Mia whispered, glancing around the room. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure if he believed himself. "As ready as I'll ever be." They waited for the signal, a text message from Rachel indicating that the coast was clear. While they lingered near the refreshment table, Ethan tried to blend in by sipping soda water and nodding politely at conversations happening nearby. He caught snippets of talk about Novatech's latest innovations, self-driving cars, quantum, computers, and even plans for space colonization. None of it mattered now, not when Genesis loomed like a shadow over all of it. Finally, Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out discreetly and read the message. "Go now. Cameras disabled for 5 minutes." Without another word, Ethan and Mia slipped away from the crowd and headed toward the elevators. Their destination was the basement level, where the secure server room was located. As they stepped into the elevator, Ethan pressed the button marked B and held his breath. The doors closed, leaving them alone in the small space. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "What happens if we get caught?" Mia asked quietly, breaking the silence. "We don't have time to think about that," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We just focus on getting the data." When the elevator reached the basement, they stepped out cautiously. The hallway ahead was dimly lit, with glowing blue strips along the ceiling casting eerie shadows on the walls. A red sign reading, "Restricted Access," hung above the steel door leading to the server room. Ethan approached it slowly, pulling out a small device Rachel had given him earlier. It was designed to bypass electronic locks, but using it required precision and luck. Mia kept watch, peeking around corners to ensure no one was coming. "Hurry," she urged under her breath. Ethan worked quickly, attaching the device to the lock panel and entering a series of commands. Seconds ticked by agonizingly slowly, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, there was a soft click, and the door swung open. Inside, rows of servers hummed softly, their blinking lights filling the room with a faint glow. Ethan moved to the central console and inserted a USB drive containing software programmed to copy the Genesis files onto an external hard drive. While the transfer took place, Mia paced nervously, her eyes darting toward the doorway. "How much longer?" she asked. "Almost done," Ethan said, watching the progress bar on the screen. Just as it reached 90%, a loud alarm blared through the hallway, startling both of them. "They must have found out," Mia exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. "Keep going, we can't stop now." The progress bar crawled forward painfully slowly, finally reaching 100%. He yanked the hard drive out of the console and shoved it into his pocket. "Let's go." They ran back into the hallway, only to find 2 security guards rushing toward them. Thinking fast, Ethan grabbed a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall and sprayed foam directly at the guards, temporarily blinding them. "Run," he shouted to Mia, and they bolted down the corridor. Behind them, shouts echoed as more guards joined the chase. Ethan and Mia ducked into a side passage, hoping to lose their pursuers. Upstairs, chaos erupted as Rachel and Alex sprang into action, creating enough commotion to draw attention away from the basement. Explosions of confetti and fake smoke filled the main hall, causing confusion among the guests. "This way," Mia called, spotting a service staircase. They raced up the steps, emerging on the ground floor just as the party began evacuating, due to the disturbance. Blending into the crowd, Ethan and Mia slipped outside unnoticed, gasping for air in the cool night breeze. Once they were safely away from the building, they met up with Rachel and Alex in a nearby alley. Both looked disheveled but triumphant. "Did you get it?" Rachel asked urgently. Ethan pulled the hard drive from his pocket and handed it to her. "It's all here." Rachel smiled, relief washing over her face. "Good work. Now we need to get this information to someone who can expose it." Over the next few hours, the Resistance uploaded the stolen files to secure servers, ensuring copies were sent to journalists, government agencies, and whistleblower organizations worldwide. By morning, news outlets were buzzing with reports about Novatech's secret experiments. Footage of failed Genesis trials surfaced online, showing horrifying images of human test subjects suffering catastrophic mental breakdowns. Public outrage spread like wildfire, demanding accountability from Marcus Langley and his company. Back at Novatech, the fallout was immediate. Law enforcement raided the headquarters, seizing documents and equipment related to Genesis. Marcus Langley attempted to flee the country but was intercepted at the airport and arrested. Sophie Bennett vanished without a trace, leaving behind questions about her role in the scandal. Meanwhile, employees scrambled to distance themselves from the controversy, some cooperating with investigators while others fled in fear. For Ethan, the victory came with mixed emotions. On one hand, he felt proud of what they'd accomplished, exposing the truth and preventing further harm. On the other hand, he couldn't forget the faces of those affected by Genesis, the lives ruined by greed and ambition. Sitting in his apartment later that night, he scrolled through articles detailing the collapse of Novatech, wondering what would come next. The following week, Rachel invited Ethan and Mia to join her in forming a new organization dedicated to monitoring ethical practices in tech development. With Novatech dismantled, its assets seized by the government, there was a chance to rebuild differently, to prioritize humanity over profit. Ethan agreed without hesitation, knowing this was just the beginning of a lifelong mission. As he looked out at the city skyline, now free of Novatech's looming presence, Ethan realized how far he'd come since finding that envelope on a rainy sidewalk. Returning those lost documents had set him on a path he never could have imagined, one that transformed not only his life, but also the future of countless others. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Ethan was ready to face them head-on, armed with courage, determination, and a renewed sense of purpose. A young black man in a hoodie stands outside a sleek modern office building at sunrise. The sky is painted with soft orange and pink hues, symbolizing hope and renewal. Behind him, the cityscape stretches into the distance, bustling with early, morning activity. In his hand, he holds a small device, a hard drive, glowing faintly with blue light representing the power of truth and justice. His expression is calm but resolute, as if he's ready to face whatever comes next. The weeks following the exposure of Novatech's secrets were chaotic, to say the least. News outlets couldn't stop talking about Genesis, dissecting every detail leaked by Ethan and the Resistance. Journalists uncovered connections between Novatech and shady government contracts, raising questions about how far-reaching the corruption truly was. Protesters gathered outside the company's headquarters daily, holding signs that read, "No more human experiments," and "Justice for Genesis victims." For once, it seemed like the world cared about ethics in technology. Ethan tried to stay focused amidst the whirlwind. He knew this was just the beginning of a much larger fight. While Novatech had fallen, there were countless other companies operating in the shadows, pushing boundaries without considering the consequences. That's why Rachel's idea of forming a watchdog organization felt so important. It wasn't just about cleaning up one mess. It was about preventing future disasters. Mia agreed wholeheartedly. "If we don't keep an eye on them, someone else will step in and do worse," she said during one of their planning meetings. We can't let what happened here happen again. Rachel nodded. Exactly. This isn't just about stopping bad actors. It's about creating systems that protect people. Humanity has to come first. They decided to call the organization Horizon Watch. Its mission was simple: monitor emerging technologies, advocate for ethical practices, and hold corporations accountable when they cross the line. With Rachel's scientific expertise, Mia's resourcefulness, and Ethan's determination, they believed they could make a difference. But starting from scratch wouldn't be easy. Their first challenge was funding. Without financial support, Horizon Watch wouldn't survive long enough. To achieve its goals, they reached out to former Novatech employees who had seen the dark side of the company and wanted to help. Some donated money, while others offered skills or connections. One unexpected ally was Alex Rivera, who used his engineering background to design tools for monitoring tech misuse. "We need to think big," Alex said during one brainstorming session. "We're not just fighting against unethical companies. We're building something better, something sustainable." Inspired by his words, Ethan suggested reaching out to universities and research institutions. Many professors and students were eager to collaborate, seeing Horizon Watch as a chance to influence the direction of technological development. Together, they organized workshops and seminars, educating the public about the dangers of unchecked innovation. Despite their progress, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Late one night, as he worked on drafting a report in his apartment, he noticed movement outside his window. At first, he thought it was just a passerby, but then he saw the same figure lingering near a lamppost across the street. "Something's wrong," he muttered to himself, closing his laptop and pulling down the blinds. Over the next few days, he spotted the same person multiple times, at the coffee shop where he studied, near the park where he jogged, even standing idly outside the makeshift office space Horizon Watch rented downtown. When Ethan mentioned it to Mia, she didn't dismiss his concerns. "It could be nothing," she admitted, "but we should take precautions, maybe change our routines, avoid predictable patterns." Rachel took things a step further. She arranged for private security consultants to assess their safety measures and teach the team basic self-defense techniques. "Better safe than sorry," she said firmly. "If someone wants to silence us, we need to be prepared." As paranoia set in, Ethan found himself questioning everyone around him, even those within Horizon Watch. Was someone leaking information? Had they underestimated how desperate certain parties might be to cover their tracks? These thoughts kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling and replaying recent conversations in his mind. One evening, as he walked home from a late meeting, Ethan finally confronted the stranger tailing him. Turning abruptly, he called out, "What do you want?" The figure froze, caught off guard. It was a woman, younger than Ethan expected, with short blonde hair and sharp features. Instead of running, she raised her hands in surrender. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said quickly. "I work for someone who wants to help." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Who sent you?" She hesitated before answering. "Sophie Bennett." His heart skipped a beat. Sophie? After disappearing following Marcus Langley's arrest, no one had heard from her. Rumors swirled that she'd gone into hiding, either to escape prosecution or because she feared retaliation from those still loyal to Novatech. "What does she want?" Ethan demanded, keeping his distance. "She knows more about Genesis than anyone," the woman replied, "and she wants to share it with you." Skeptical but intrigued, Ethan agreed to meet Sophie under strict conditions. The location was a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, chosen for its anonymity. When Ethan arrived, Sophie was already seated at a corner table wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf despite the warm weather. "You look different," Ethan said, sliding into the seat opposite her. "So do you," Sophie replied dryly. More confident, less like the kid who wandered into Novatech months ago. Ethan ignored the comment. "Why are you here? What do you know?" Sophie leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Genesis was only part of it. There's a network, companies, governments, organizations, all working together to push humanity into a new era. An era they control. Ethan frowned. Control how? By deciding who gets enhanced, who survives, who thrives, Sophie explained. It's not just about soldiers anymore. It's about rewriting the rules of existence itself. Her words sent chills down Ethan's spine. If she was telling the truth, the scope of the problem was far greater than he'd imagined. But could he trust her? Or was this another trap? Before he could respond, Sophie handed him a flash drive. Everything I've gathered is on here. Use it wisely. Ethan stared at the device, weighing his options. Finally, he slipped it into his pocket. If you're lying, I'm not, Sophie interrupted. But whether you believe me or not, you'll need this information sooner or later. With that, she stood and left, disappearing into the crowd outside. Ethan sat there for a long time, staring at the flash drive and wondering what Pandora's box he'd just opened. Back at Horizon Watch, Ethan debated sharing the new intel with the team. On one hand, it could provide critical insights into the broader conspiracy Sophie described. On the other hand, involving them might put them in even greater danger. Ultimately, he decided transparency was key. They were in this together after all. When he revealed the contents of the flash drive, the room fell silent. Documents, emails, and encrypted files painted a chilling picture of global collusion. Companies once thought independent were secretly coordinating efforts to advance human-machine integration. Governments turned a blind eye in exchange for promises of military superiority, and ordinary citizens remained blissfully unaware of the forces shaping their futures. This changes everything, Rachel said finally, breaking the silence. If we're going to stop them, we'll need allies, powerful ones. Ethan nodded. Then let's start building bridges. We've got the truth on our side, and now we have proof. Over the coming months, Horizon Watch grew bolder, leveraging the evidence to rally support from activists, lawmakers, and tech innovators committed to ethical progress. Public pressure mounted, forcing industries to reconsider their priorities. Slowly but surely, change began to take root. For Ethan, the journey was far from over. Every victory came with new challenges, every answer raised more questions. Yet through it all, he held on to hope, the belief that humanity could rise above greed and fear, forging a future defined not by profit but by compassion. As he stood on a rooftop overlooking the city one evening, Ethan realized something profound. Returning those lost documents hadn't just changed his life. It had ignited a spark capable of lighting the way for generations to come. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. Not alone, but alongside the friends and allies who shared his vision of a brighter tomorrow. A young black man in a hoodie stands on a rooftop at sunset, looking out over a sprawling city skyline. The sky is painted with warm hues of orange, pink, and purple, symbolizing hope and transformation. In his hand, he holds a small flash drive, glowing faintly with blue light, representing the power of truth and knowledge. Behind him, silhouettes of two other figures, a woman with curly hair and another person in a lab coat, stand together, symbolizing unity and teamwork. The scene conveys determination, resilience, and the promise of a brighter future. Months turned into years, and Ethan Carter became more than just a name. He became a symbol. To some, he was a hero who had risked everything to expose corruption and protect humanity. To others, he was a threat, someone who dared to challenge the status quo and disrupt the unchecked march of technological progress. But no matter how people viewed him, one thing was certain. Ethan's actions had changed the world forever. Horizon Watch grew into a global movement, its influence reaching far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Universities partnered with them to develop ethical guidelines for emerging technologies. Governments passed laws requiring transparency in corporate research projects. Even tech giants began restructuring their operations to align with Horizon Watch's principles, knowing that public trust was essential for survival. It wasn't perfect. There were still battles to fight, but progress was undeniable. Ethan's role evolved as well. No longer just an intern or a courier, he became a leader, speaking at conferences, advising policymakers, and mentoring young activists eager to join the cause. He worked closely with Rachel, Mia, and Alex, each of whom brought unique strengths to the table. Together, they built something extraordinary, a network of individuals committed to ensuring that technology served humanity, not the other way around. But leadership came with its own challenges. As Horizon Watch gained prominence, so did the threats against it. Cyber attacks targeted their servers, attempting to destroy evidence and silence dissent. Anonymous messages warned Ethan to back off, claiming he was playing with forces beyond his understanding. Yet despite the risks, Ethan refused to step aside. If anything, the resistance only fueled his resolve. One day, while reviewing newly decrypted files from Sophie's flash drive, Ethan uncovered something shocking. Genesis wasn't the end game. It was merely a stepping stone. Buried deep within, the data were plans for something called Project Ascension. Unlike Genesis, which focused on merging human consciousness with machines, Ascension aimed to create entirely artificial beings capable of independent thought and emotion. These entities wouldn't be tools or weapons, they would be replacements for humanity itself. The implications were staggering. If successful, Ascension could render humans obsolete, relegating them to the annals of history while their synthetic counterparts inherited the Earth. Worse still, the project was already underway, funded by shadowy organizations operating outside the reach of any single government. Ethan shared the discovery with his team, and the reaction was immediate. "This is bigger than Novatech," Rachel said, her voice trembling with urgency. "If we don't stop this now, there won't be a future for anyone." Mia nodded grimly. "We need to act fast." "Who's behind it?" Piecing together fragments of information, they identified a consortium of corporations and governments working under the guise of humanitarian efforts. Their headquarters was located in a remote compound protected by state-of-the-art security systems. Breaking in would be nearly impossible, but doing nothing was unthinkable. "We can't take them head-on," Alex pointed out. "We'll need to hit them where it hurts, their funding." The team devised a bold plan. Using leaked documents and insider intel, they exposed the identities of key investors backing Project Ascension. Whistleblowers came forward, revealing shady deals and illegal transactions. Public outrage erupted once again, pressuring banks and financial institutions to sever ties with the consortium. Without money, the project ground to a halt. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. One night, unable to sleep, he returned to the rooftop where he often went to think. Staring out at the city lights, he replayed every moment of the past few years in his mind. How had he gone from being a struggling college student delivering packages to standing at the forefront of a global revolution? And most importantly, what came next? As if sensing his thoughts, Mia joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," she teased gently, handing him a cup. "Feels like I am sometimes," Ethan admitted with a wry smile. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing enough? If we're really making a difference?" Mia sipped her coffee thoughtfully before answering. "Of course I do. But then I remember why we started this. To give people a chance to shape their own futures. We might not fix everything overnight, but we're planting seeds. Someday, someone will reap the harvest." Her words resonated deeply with Ethan. For all the uncertainty and danger, he knew they were on the right path. They weren't fighting for themselves. They were fighting for everyone who deserved a fair shot at life, free from exploitation and fear. In the months that followed, Horizon Watch shifted its focus to education and advocacy. By empowering communities to understand and engage with technology, they hoped to prevent abuses before they happened. Schools adopted curriculums designed by the organization, teaching students about ethics and innovation. Startups sought guidance on implementing responsible practices. Slowly but surely, the culture around technology began to shift. Ethan also found time to reflect on his personal journey. He finished his degree, graduating with honors, and continued pursuing engineering projects that aligned with his values. Along the way, he inspired countless others to follow in his footsteps, proving that anyone, regardless of background or circumstances, could make a difference. Years later, when asked about his legacy, Ethan always gave the same answer. I didn't do it alone. None of us could have. It takes courage, teamwork, and belief in something greater than ourselves to change the world. And change the world they did. Thanks to Ethan and Horizon Watch, humanity entered a new era, one defined not by fear or greed, but by hope and collaboration. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright. As Ethan stood on that rooftop one final time, watching the sun set over the city he'd helped transform, he felt a profound sense of peace. Returning those lost documents had been the start of an incredible journey. A journey that reminded him of the power of honesty, integrity, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest actions could lead to monumental change.